But to kick us off, I want to introduce Daniela Spoto, who's the director of the Anti-Hunger Initiatives at the Hawaii Appleseed Center. I've had the great privilege of interacting with Daniela over the years and just know her to be an extremely passionate and dedicated and extremely focused individual who has made wonderful developments and strides, especially in terms of increasing food access to a lot of our vulnerable communities. She's done tremendous work with programs like SNAP and kupuna feeding programs, increasing child nutrition and access to food. And she's just been a wonderful and steadfast voice in advocating for health issues and food system change here in Hawaii. And so, yes, my great pleasure to turn it over to Daniela. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Noah. It's a nice introduction. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. Can everyone see that slide?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, thank you again, and aloha, everyone. I know a lot of folks here, but there's so many new faces, and that's always really inspiring to see how much this movement has grown in the more than a decade since I've been working on this issue in Hawaii. So thank you again so much for inviting me to speak on this topic. It's really near and dear to my heart, but also important to so many aspects of Hawaii life, our environment, to our health, our economy, but also to something intangible. And that is kind of where I want to go with these opening remarks, is talking about this intangible piece. So it's our community values. And so when I was first invited to speak on this topic, growing together farmers, food hubs, and community perspectives, I thought that's really broad. There's a lot of different directions you could take this theme, and a lot of different ways that you could go. I asked for some more context to see if I could find a thread to tie it all together. And when I saw the amazing panel of speakers that I'd be opening for, I started to see a theme. And a question popped into my mind. This is a question I've been thinking about for a long time. And I think it has a different answer depending on who you ask. So the question is, why do people in Hawaii grow food? And if we had more time, I'd love to actually ask you all this question and think about it, for me to hear, why do we think that people in Hawaii grow food? I think the short answer in so many cases is it depends. It depends on what kind of farmer you're talking about, who, what community. And since we're talking about community perspectives, I thought it would be helpful to deconstruct some of the narratives we often hear from the policy sphere and ask ourselves if they really line up with what the community wants. So narratives from the policy sphere. These are some things that we hear around the legislature around this issue. Farming is a business. If the farmer makes more money, the farmer will farm. If we invest in large farms, small farms will also benefit. If we invest in agribusiness, we will create jobs. So I'm not saying these narratives are not true. I do want to challenge them, and I hope, and I believe that the speakers that will follow will be showing us that there are perhaps some other reasons why people in Hawaii grow food. I believe they're not the whole story, and that we can explore some of the other reasons why we value this so much. What is our value? Why do we want more local? So yes, again, they dominate the conversation at the legislature, the executive branch, many ag, food, and business circles. And these are the people that are deciding how we allocate resources, the people with power. So the speakers that follow are definitely going to give us, I think, some tangible ways that we can challenge these perspectives. And I think if we had more time, we could also come up with more narratives, and some even around why consumers buy local. So not just about the growers, but the consumers. So I know we have a speaker on our panel today that's going to dive further into that question. But I love that we have these opportunities to come together and ask ourselves these questions. The question that then comes up for me is, where do we go from there? Being part of these conversations for years, I see things changing. But how do we get from the conversation sphere to, actual real on the ground solutions? I go to a lot of national conferences, and I'm here to tell you, and I know this is not news, that Hawaii is unique. We have, all of the same access to all of the federal nutrition programs and USDA agriculture programs that the rest of the states do. But we need to figure out ways to leverage them and also to, find homegrown solutions that speak to that. And I think, we know the ways that Hawaii is unique as residents and people who have grown up and been working here for decades, in some cases generations. But I do think it's helpful to articulate, not just articulate, but embrace and leverage some specific ways that we're unique if we're going to achieve a collective vision that challenges the status quo. So I do think there's two truths here that I want to talk about a little bit. One is that our geographic isolation. So our communities have already seen what happens when disasters strike. It could be a natural disaster, hurricane, tsunami, volcano eruption, eco-political, the 2019 government shutdown, COVID-19 pandemic. During all of these, we saw supply chain disruptions wreaking havoc on food availability, long lines for people waiting for food, empty shelves, and these always disproportionately falling upon the shoulders of low-income, Indigenous, and immigrant communities. So this is, disasters, this is not theoretical for us. This is real. We have lived it, and we know that it's real and urgent. The second one that I think makes this really unique, and that I think is where the real opportunity lies, is we have this amazing resource of Indigenous values and knowledge. I was talking to my sister recently. She is a professor in California, and she's an anarchist theorist. And we were talking about social movements and how they're sometimes criticized for seeking to tear down an existing system before building a new one. But we're talking about how this sort of black and white choice between the status quo and this idea of disruptive revolution kind of ignores this third, what I believe to be better third way. And that's looking towards existing Indigenous solutions. Our communities are notoriously innovative and have been for generations, and they're already building thriving community food systems that draw from the past and look towards the future. So these solutions already exist, and I think we're going to hear about some of them today. They just have to be resourced and illuminated. And so I like, the idea of focusing on that third way and not thinking that we have to rip off a Band-Aid of this existing system in order to build a new one. So in closing, I just wanted to say, I think we have, almost 50 of us here today signing up to talk about this issue. You're the community. You're here to talk about what it looks like to grow together, and you're not here to figure out how we can replace imports or maximize farm profits or grow more crops for export. We're here to get serious about what this collective vision looks like and to get some actual tools on how we can invest in that together. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what the rest of our speakers have to say and working with all of you to make this vision a reality in the future. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Daniela. Really appreciate that question, and I think when we were on that PBS special together, exploring local food in Hawaii, we were both sharing that same thought, right? That these dominant narratives are, as you say, not necessarily falsehoods completely, but they certainly are not the whole picture. And yeah, I just think it's a really powerful question and powerful way to start, thinking about why, what is the drivers and what are the values. Also made me think as you were talking about the flip side of it, why don't people grow food? And, that's often part of the dominant narrative too, right? All the barriers to engaging in agriculture and farming. And, for our next speaker, Dr. Susan Crow, I think a lot of her work looks to leverage the science and the research, right, to help lower some of those barriers and provide that direct, right, support and resources to farmers that can allow them to overcome some of those reasons of why some people don't grow food. And so, yes, very, very pleased to introduce